Welcome. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you may be joining us today. My name is Ju, and I'm a business development manager at Play Partnerships based in Seoul, Korea. My role is to help developers find opportunities and grow their business on Google Play. This is the second year we are running a webinar dedicated to emerging markets, and I'm both excited and honored to open this Go Global event on emerging markets 2 years in a row. We have a lovely group of colleagues from Play Partnerships, business development managers, growth consultants, and our international growth team sharing insights with you today. They will be introducing themselves later before their respective sessions, but I just wanted to recognize them today. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. During the webinar, please do not record or share any of this content on social networks. If you have any questions, please type this in the Q&A box at the side of the screen or log on to slido.com with event code #GoEmerging2022. Given this event is online, those questions will really help us to make this session more interactive. So please don't be shy, and we will be addressing your questions in the Q&A session. Also, as always, we look forward to hearing your feedback, as that is what makes these sessions better. So please don't hold back and kindly help us by responding to the survey, where the link will be provided at the end. Now that logistics are taken care of, let me move to what is most important, what we're covering today. We're really happy and appreciative that you have joined us. And in the first session, Katara will share market and gamer insights from emerging markets utilizing Play data. Then our colleagues from emerging markets will talk about strategies and tactics to win in these markets, covering broad topics from localized pricing, genre insights, and monetization best practices. Then Marcos will introduce how Google is supporting efforts on this front. And then finally, we will address questions you have left throughout the day in the Q&A session. So again, please feel free to directly leave a question in the box on the side, go to slido.com, or scan the QR code we've provided. Now, without further ado, let me hand it over to Kataro, who will start our adventure on emerging markets. It's all yours, Kataro. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kataro, and I'm a growth consultant from Google Play's growth consulting team. As a growth consultant, my team and I work with developers to provide data insights and consultations to ensure the success of the developers. And I will today share with some insights about the emerging market through the lens of the Google Play data. So let's jump straight into it. So in regards to emerging markets, so emerging markets have become increasingly a bigger contributor to Google Play's overall global business. And when we look at the top 20 grossing markets on Play, we see that 7 out of the 20 are from the emerging market regions. In regards to MPUs, or new paying users, as we call them, these is also been steadily growing and has doubled in the last couple of years, especially from like the 18 to 24 range for males. These are the fastest growing in the emerging markets, as they get their first smartphones and they begin to make the first gaming purchases. So before we actually deep dive into the market, let's first understand the groupings for emerging markets and Tier 1 markets for today's data comparison. Emerging markets consist of India, Southeast Asia, LATAM, and MENA. And the Tier 1 markets consist of US, Japan, and Korea. However, for today's comparisons, we'll remove Japan and Korea from the list, as these two markets are very unique in their own way, and sort of making that comparison not be good for actual benchmarking insights. So I've deliberately left them out as for today's comparison. So first, let's look at the sort of the engagement patterns through with the emerging markets. The comparison here we made with the map is comparing all the markets to the US, and we can see that in terms of like relative to the US market, The more closer the different markets are to the US, the green will be in more darker, and the less, I guess, similarities there are, they'll be, shift towards sort of the brownish red area. So you can assume that similar colored markets are similar in terms of the user engagement patterns in this case. So we see that some of the emerging markets actually show quite similar patterns to the US or other mature markets that a lot of the developers prioritize. For example, possible pairs with high similarities are US, India, and Saudi Arabia, and other possible pairings in Western Europe and Southeast Asian markets. We also looked at the user spending patterns with the same method and relative to in relation to the US market. For the user spending patterns, we see the groupings with similar markets such as Korea, Japan, Russia, Southeast Asia, and Saudi Arabia, and Western Europe and Brazil. These groupings can be good reference points for you when you're trying to decide testing markets for your primary target markets, especially since these emerging markets generally cost much less for user acquisition. For example, markets with similar engagement pattern are good options to test your title's engagement performance during open beta tests, and markets with similar monetization patterns are also good options for soft launch if you soft launch in several markets and would like to test for monetization. For both of the engagement and spending pattern analysis, we are looking at general pattern. So if we actually deep dive into specific genres or countries, there could be different groupings as well, which we could take offline for further discussion through our business consultations with your business development managers. So firstly, let's look at, going into the comparisons, let's look at the emerging market gamers and what devices they're using compared to Tier 1 markets. For India, both users and buyers are heavily skewed towards male, but in Southeast Asia, there are more female users compared to India. But similar to India, Southeast Asia's buyers skew towards the male audience. In LATAM, we see a bit of a difference. There are around 50% females and males. So in terms of sort of ratio, males and females are quite on an even scale. But however, the males make up the majority for the buyers. In MENA, it is similar to Southeast Asia from the previous slide, where males make up most of the users as well as the buyers. When we look at age demographics, we see that majority of the users are in 18 to 24 and 25 to 34 range, and 18 to 24 range make up majority of the buyers. For the previous slide, we can come to the conclusion that the younger male demographic make up of the majority of the both users and buyers. And for Southeast Asia, ages 18 to 24 and 25 to 34 make up most of the users and buyers. For LATAM and MENA, we see pretty similar results to Southeast Asia, where 18 to 24 and 25 to 34 range make up the bulk of the users, with majority of buyers also being in the 18 to 35 age group. So now let's quickly look at what kind of devices our emerging markets are using. To have a reference point, I bought the US market as well. In DPI spec, blue is the most lowest spec with 320 DPI. And the red is the second lowest with 480 DPI. We clearly see that 320 DPI devices dominate emerging markets, with the MENA being the exception. For RAM specs, we see a similar story where most high-end RAMs are available in the Tier 1 market, so in the US, but a lot of the higher-end RAM devices in the emerging markets, you see like a less common in terms of sort of the RAM specs there as well. So these data points tell us that device optimization is a must if you're a developer who have been focusing on the mature market, but now looking to expand in the emerging markets. Okay, so now let's look at the top performing game categories from Google Play in respect to the emerging markets. So I listed out top 5 categories by installs in our emerging markets. And action, casual, arcade, puzzle are within top 5 installs category in all emerging markets. This is actually a common trend in other mature markets as well. We see these categories very often in top 5 install categories, which suggests that hit titles also gain popularity in the emerging markets. Now let's see in which categories the users are spending the most. Action and casual, with their high number of installs, also come in the top 5 user spend categories in all these emerging markets. In addition to this, strategy category was also always within top 5. So how are these high monetizing categories performing in these emerging markets? So this is where we'll go into sort of like the deep dives in terms of the 3 categories mentioned. So let's look at the comparisons. If we start off with the primary monetization metrics for the action category, we see that, ARPDAU and buyer percentage, LATAM shows the highest compared to the other emerging markets. However, you can see that there is significant gap between US and overall emerging market regions. Moving on to the second monetization metrics for action category, we see that the ARPPU and average transaction value are similar across all the emerging markets. Although emerging markets have a lower buy percentage and ARPPU, the action category, if you remember, was the highest revenue generating category and install category. This tells us that the action titles have been successfully implementing a monetization strategy that convert large portions of users at a low price point and benefit from massive user base. So just because the markets have lower primary monetizing metrics, like compared to tier 1 markets, this does not necessarily mean that the markets are not fit for monetization opportunities, but it's actually quite the opposite. Now let's look at the strategy category. Again, for the primary monetization metrics, generally all the emerging markets are behind the US. However, the metrics are significantly higher than the action genre. Out of the emerging markets, Southeast Asia has the top performing metrics with the highest ARPDAU and buyer percentage. Now looking at the secondary monetizations for strategy category. In general, they have a higher metrics compared to action genre, but still lags behind the US. However, the strategy genre has the highest ARPPU and average transaction value out of all the categories being discussed today. Now let's look at the monetizations for casual category. When we look at the casual category, it has the lowest primary monetization metrics compared to the previous 2 genres. However, this is somewhat expected, as casual games also tend to rely on ad revenue, as well as focus on sort of the user acquisition and getting as many users as possible. That being said, LATAM has the highest performing metrics out of all the other emerging market regions for this category. So when we look at the secondary monetization aspect in regards to the casual category, ARPPU and ATV are also one of the lowest compared to the other genres with the emerging markets. But in terms of sort of overall performance, I would say that the Southeast Asia take the lead here compared to the other emerging markets in regards to ARPPU and average transaction value. Now let's look at the engagement side for the emerging markets using the same categories discussed in the monetization metrics. When looking at the engagement metrics for action category, we can see that the MENA region has the highest sessions per day, even surpassing the US. So and for the minutes played on average per day, Southeast Asia has the longest playtime. For action category games, you can see that the emerging markets have much higher engagement overall, even surpassing the US in terms of engagement. Now, when we look at the retention side for new users, India, interestingly, has the highest day 2 retention. However, when comparing the day 28 retention, Southeast Asia and MENA leads the emerging market, and again, being higher than the US. For strategy category engagement metrics, most regions are on par with the US, averaging more than 5 sessions per day. In regards to playtime, Southeast Asia has the longest playtime comparable to the US, and overall have a higher playtime compared to the action category looked at earlier. For retention, MENA takes the lead out of the emerging markets for both day 2 and day 28 retention. However, all emerging markets regions have a higher retention, both short-term and long-term, compared to the US. So we can see a general trend here again with this category where the performance in terms of engagement, at least, and retention, it is higher than the T1 markets. And finally, looking at the casual category, in terms of sessions, they are relatively similar across all emerging markets and slightly exceeding the US. And for playtime, Southeast Asia comes on top with almost 30 minutes of playtime per day on average. For casual categories, new user retention, India has the highest day 2 retention, with Southeast Asia and MENA regions leading in the day 28 region retention. Most of the emerging markets exceed US again in terms of performance. And so this might be in terms of sort of all the genres that we've discussed today in terms of engagement. This might be also good to consider for soft launches and testing, as well as if you're going to actually going into the markets for full release. Emerging markets are also good for engagement, and it might be a good strategic plan to focus on acquiring users rather than sort of focusing on the monetization in general. So I know there was a lot of data that I shared in this presentation today. So just summing everything up, what are the key takeaways for the emerging markets? So first, we saw a high potential in investing in emerging markets, with their fast growth, and especially as the largest gamer groups you've noticed are in the sort of 18 to 24 age group. Again, when they, this is an age group where they'll, first get their smartphones and then, have the ability to make the first mobile gaming purchases. So capturing the younger generation and retaining them should provide a path for a long-term success in those regions. As for the opportunity that are present right now, these markets are also good options for cheaper testing, as we observed the similarities between the emerging markets, mature markets, and identified similar markets groupings. Secondly, yes, currently, it's very obvious that the monetization is well behind mature markets, but as we witnessed that a number of titles successfully monetizing in these markets have consistently been growing. Games investing in sort of localized strategy, pricing, and optimizations for tech can close the gap through high volumes of users. We specifically saw this in action and casual titles through performance benchmark data. Aside from those two categories, strategy was on top of the revenues categories, and strategy titles do show the highest monetization performance, even though their user base is much smaller than the other two categories that was discussed today. But this trend is not necessarily unique to the emerging markets. We do see similar trends in these categories from the mature markets as well. And most importantly, Google Play Growth Consulting team is always looking to support all of you here today. So we can only go over the general trend for emerging markets today. But if you want a deeper dive or more specific insights, please feel free to reach out to your business development managers for support, and we can customize the consultations to your needs when looking to expand into emerging markets. So again, thank you for your time today and taking the time to listen to the presentation. And hopefully this has provided some of the insights, general high-level insights, and a better understanding for the emerging markets. Again, thank you for your time, and I'll see you soon at the question and answer section. Bye-bye.
Wow, thank you, Kotaro, for those amazing insights. Hi, I'm May, Business Development Manager at Google Play Games Southeast Asia. Today, I will present two main sections: current landscape of emerging markets from a developer perspective, and how to win in these markets. We understand that winning in emerging markets is hard, but in the past couple of years with COVID tailwinds, there are signs that the three biggest bottlenecks to mobile gaming growth in emerging markets is getting rapidly closed. Don't get me wrong, not everything is fixed and perfect. Developers should still be realistic about the opportunities, but it is getting much better. First, device specs have improved. Example, we are seeing more devices with higher specs within 3 to 4 GB RAM being shipped in Southeast Asia and India. 75% of devices in Southeast Asia is around 2 to 4 GB, and the share of 1 to 2 GB devices have greatly reduced. However, it is still important that developers optimize their game for lower specs hardware in order to win in emerging markets. Second, there are faster and cheaper network connectivity all around. The cost of data and connectivity has greatly reduced, and the adoption of 4G in markets like Southeast Asia has greatly increased. On the other hand, majority of players are still on prepaid plan in Latin America. Thus, it is still important to allow players to manage their own data usage, especially when downloading or loading the game. And finally, there has been an acceleration of digital payment options in Southeast Asia, India, and LATAM. As a huge proportion of the population in emerging countries are either unbanked or underbanked, the rise of e-wallets in this region has greatly increased the accessibility of online purchases, and thus resulting in a rise of more new buyers across all of these markets. Now, let's switch gears to talk about how to win in emerging markets. There are 5 main pillars developers should do to gain success. Number 1, local language translations. Number 2, we've talked about this, local device optimization. And number 3, local live ops and content. And 4, building local community and local marketing. And finally, having a local price strategy. Now let's look at the first one. Firstly, translating in-game text and voice is the first thing you should consider when entering emerging markets. For example, for most emerging market countries, English language proficiency isn't as advanced, and thus there is a heavier reliance on local languages. This can also be seen where in countries like Indonesia, Thailand, Brazil, Mexico, most of the search language is in local languages. As such, we're seeing up to 95% of top grossing games in this country make game language localization a top priority in order to better engage users. Secondly, as mentioned, local device optimization is also equally important in order to succeed in emerging markets. In a recent Google Games survey, close to 40% of players in emerging markets deem bugs, glitches, and crashes as being a particularly pain point, suggesting that game performance is actually not optimized for low-end phones. Thus, it is very important to optimize for local device specs in order to succeed in emerging markets. Next, having local live ops and content is also an important factor to constantly engage users to improve the longevity of your game. You can leverage key moments in the year to create live op content and promotions across all emerging markets. Some of the events are also cross-region, such as Ramadan, Diwali, and Christmas, which cultural meanings and celebrations are synonymous across the globe. There are also market-specific festivals and events you should not miss, such as Carnival in Brazil, which is a celebration before Ash Wednesday. the carnival is marked by colorful costumes, music and dance, grand parades, and food festivals, all providing great content for your game. Next, you have Holi and Songkran respectively in India and Thailand, both major religious festivals celebrated in each country in their own unique ways. And finally, Day of the Dead in Mexico that happens in November every year, a time where locals remember and honor those who have passed. Creating live arts from these events are just a starting point. There are many more interesting festivals and cultures in each country that you can get inspiration for your live ops and promotions. Now let's look at 2 case studies on how they leverage localized games for their success. First off, Honkai Impact 3 from MiHoYo created an exclusive stigma for Songkran in Thailand. Songkran is a religious festival celebrated across Thailand where people often splash waters to signify the arrival of the new year. Leveraging on this cultural tradition, Honkai Impact 3 included a weapon skill that spawns water balloon to create familiarity and relevance to the event. They also created a campaign around this new stigma, allowing players to claim the new stigmata by completing daily missions and claim rewards. As we can see, the event was a great success and their Thai user community loved the event, resulting in a 10% DAU increase and a 100% increase in spends right at the start of the event. Now, let's talk about Battlegrounds Mobile India, or better known as BGMI, how they overhauled their localization game and resulted in extremely impressive matrix uplift. BGMI went beyond language localization and utilized local KOLs to build their in-game voice pack. And no, that was not all. They localized social content for the Indian audience, invested in creating local influencers, and player communities which successfully turned BGMI into a cultural phenomenon in India. The results speak for itself. 60 million daily active users, 34 million registered users, and 2.4 million peak concurrent players. According to BGMI, their strategy to put local fans at the forefront of everything, including customized voice packs of their superstars, building localized real-life content, and investing in the creators' ecosystem, all reap massive rewards for the game. Now, I hope you are as inspired as I do after seeing the opportunity and tips of how to win in emerging markets. That marks the end of my sharing. Next, you will learn more about local price strategy and marketing tips from my colleagues, Vinay and Zui. Thank you.
Thanks, May. Those inputs on localization are certainly critical for developers to succeed in emerging markets. Hi, everyone. I'm Vinay Charanya, part of the Play Games Partnerships team in India. And there's another aspect of localization that is equally important for developers to get right for succeeding in emerging markets. That's localized pricing. In this session today, I will cover why localized pricing is important and how we as Google can help you get it right in emerging markets. Let us take a step back though. As developers, one of your key business goals is to convert users to purchasers. To turn your users into purchasers, as a developer, you need to offer the right value at the right price point. This value being offered to users is dependent on the game design, on the economy, genre, among other factors. The price point, however, at which users convert is an aspect that is quite agnostic of the game design to a large extent. This, in fact, is significantly influenced by the past transaction behavior and purchasing preferences of users in that geo. This is essentially determined by the purchasing power parity of that market. I'm sure we're all aware of the concept of purchasing power parity. To put it simply, it is a theory that aims to determine the adjustments needed to be made in the exchange rates of two currencies. This then makes them at par with the purchasing power of each other, thus leading to localized pricing for specific geos in our case. An example of this would be YouTube Premium. It can cost upwards of $10 a month for certain developed markets, but could go way lower, say around $5 for some of the emerging markets. Now that we've understood localized pricing as well as its linkage to purchasing power parity, let me go back again to how we as Google Play can help share insights on this. Price points at which users purchase are influenced by past transaction behavior as well as purchasing preferences. And insights on these two parameters is something that Google Play can provide to you. This will enable developers to make database decisions on pricing in-app items, thus improving buyer conversion and overall revenue. How do you avail of this? You can reach out to your Play POC for genre and geo-specific pricing insights. This will thus help you price your in-app SKUs more accurately and also help you get better at your business objective of converting users to purchases. Let's now look at how these pricing insights will look like in the form of an output. For a particular geo, we're going to split the popular price points into different tiers or price bands. We'll then arrange these popular price bands in two ways. Those that are top contributing by revenue and those that are top contributing by transactions. Let me share examples of a few top geos to explain this further. First, let's take a look at India as the geo. The data on the screen is for the top grossing apps and games for the Indian market in Q3 of 2022. As you can see, we've divided the popular price points into different price bands or tiers. The price tier 1 is between 0 to 46 Indian rupees and price tier 2 is between 46 to 80 Indian rupees, and so on and so forth for the other price tiers. We have then arranged these price bands by top contributing by revenue and top contributing by transactions. As we can see, price band 7, that is, the one between 380 to 550 Indian rupees, is the most popular price band in terms of revenue contribution for the Indian market. We can also see that price band 3, that is, 84 to 131 Indian rupees, is the most popular price band in terms of number of transactions for the market. Now, once you have this information, you can compare it to your own app or games data. Evaluate how your SKUs are contributing to revenue and transactions as compared to the top grossing apps and games in that particular market, and thus make changes accordingly to your in-app pricing. Similarly, let's have a look at this data for some other geos. Let's look at Indonesia. Here again, we see that the top grossing apps and games are having their prices that are widespread, but also the popular ones are in price band 3 and price band 7. So price band 3, that is between 16,550 and 25,000 Indonesian rupiah, is the most popular price band in terms of revenue contribution. While price band 7, that is between 68,900 and 98,000 Indonesian rupiah, is the most popular price band in terms of number of transactions. So this is how you will evaluate your pricing for the Indonesian market and compare your current data to this particular price points and see how well or how much you can change to improve your own revenues. Lastly, let's have a quick look at the Brazil market. Coincidentally, the same price bands, that's 3 and 7, are the most popular for transactions and revenue contributions for Brazil too. Now, all of these are powerful insights that will help you succeed in emerging markets by getting your pricing strategy right. Let me now end my session by showing you a few examples of how other game developers have incorporated localized pricing in their apps and games. On the screen, you'll see a set of screenshots, but we've segmented it into two buckets. Number one, these screenshots are from developers that have discounted their starter packs significantly to match the popular transacting price tiers for a particular geo. This has thus helped them drive first-time buyer conversion. The second bucket is actually of developers that have created multiple SKUs to offer value for a wide range of price points. Now, this is really critical because for emerging markets, you just don't need to reduce your price point, but also need to reduce the value of your offering to match that pricing. And hence, these are successes that we can now reflect on, learn from, and also incorporate it in your apps and games to get your pricing strategy correct for emerging markets. All of these powerful insights can be shared to you by your Play POC. I would request you to reach out, get in touch with us so that we can then share with you sharper insights on pricing for a particular genre, geo, or even for a set of custom peers. Lastly, we want to empower developers to explore opportunities for optimizing pricing strategies. And we are developing new tools within the Google Play console that will help you test these prices at scale. And you can then run regular, robust experiments globally to ensure your game economy is optimized and creating better experiences for all your players with the right pricing strategy. Just scan this QR code and sign up for the same. Thank you for the time for this session. I will now pass it on to Zui to cover the next session.
Hello, my name is Zui Nguyen. I'm a Gaming International Growth Consultant here at Google. Today, I will briefly go over some key trend and game genre insights, as well as go over some UH benchmark in 4 emerging market regions. While emerging markets have great growth potential, they also diverse and each market comes with very different characteristics. In order to win market share in these regions, it is important for gaming business to understand such nuances. So now let us go over 4 main emerging market regions, starting with Southeast Asia. So Southeast Asia is home to 320 million gamers, and this number is growing very fast. On average, the region sees 3 billion in downloads and 1 billion in purchase revenue, and growing year to year consistently from 2019. At least 1 in 3 smartphone owners in Southeast Asia have played mobile games in the last 7 days. 2/3 of the gaming population are engaged in esports. And I want to call out Indonesia in particular, which is slowly growing to becoming a gaming powerhouse in recent years with a massive volume of gamers as well as gaming revenue. In terms of localization, each country speaks a different language. That's why localization is extremely important for your user acquisition and marketing strategy in Southeast Asia. User preference, they love humor, social engagement, as well as heartwarming content. And this could be the way for you to convey your message in advertising. The next market we will look at is Latin America. So Latin America is a fast-growing gaming region of the world. According to Newzoo, we saw 10 billion download and 1 billion in-app purchase revenue year over year, and consistently growing since 2019. The region also have a very young population with a median age of just 30 years old. So 140 million gamers market has been growing rapidly recent years, driven by mobile gaming, and the mobile device penetration continues to increase in the region. Localization is once again very important for Latin America. Overall, English proficiency level in the region is low, with Portuguese and Spanish are the main language spoken in the region. So the third market we will cover is India. So if we exclude China, which is a very challenging market for overseas publisher to enter, then India is by far the largest gaming export market in the world, with 1.4 billion population and 900 million internet users, out of which we have 174 active mobile gamers. In 2021, this region generated 9.3 billion gaming download with action being the most popular choice gaming genre of choice in the region. Indian gamers also have a strong preference for Android, which account for 95% of the mobile operating system share, with an average hours spent daily on mobile game increase to 4.7 hours in 2021 compared to 3.7 hours in 2019. In terms of localization, while it is a very diverse market with over 22 languages spoken in various regions, English is actually fully acceptable as the main language for apps and gaming, with Hindi being the second most popular language online. So as a game publisher, you can definitely get away with publishing using only English in India. Last but not least, we will look at Middle East and North Africa for our fourth emerging gaming market. So Middle East and North Africa is a home to a huge and diverse audience of 500 million gamers, out of which 85% play on mobile. This region generates 10 billion in download and 4.6 billion in purchase revenue in 2022, with an impressive year-over-year growth of 10.8%, which is the fastest growing gaming region in the world, according to the Newzoo report. The gamer in demographic in the Middle East and North Africa also defy stereotype, with 41% of gamers between the age of 21 to 35, and 40% are female gamers. Middle East and North Africa gamers have high purchasing power, particularly in Gulf countries. 54% of Middle East gamers have paid for in-app purchase in gaming, and our data suggests that the number of whale spender or big spender in gaming in 2022 is around 11.7 million gamers. In terms of languages, the region has a strong preference for Arabic in their gaming and entertainment content, but global IPs are also consumed in English. So now that we have go over the four main emerging gaming market, let's do a quick recap on the implication to your gaming business. So what with all this data, like what are the takeaway for you? So we saw high potential in investing in emerging market for the future, right? Understanding that the user value and the IAP is small right now compared to mature market, but this is a way for you to get a market share in the region that is very much still growing, especially with a large gamer group of the age of 18 to 24 who are getting their first smartphone and making their first mobile gaming purchases. As for the opportunities that are present right now, this market are also good option for cheaper testing, as we observe some similarity between emerging market and mature market in terms of market groupings. Secondly, we all know that user monetization is well behind mature markets, but we have witnessed that the number of titles that are successful in monetizing in this market are consistently growing, with games that are invest in proper localization strategy and tech optimization can definitely close the gap of revenue to a high volume of users. We specifically saw this in action and casual titles through our performance benchmark data. Aside from these two categories, strategy was one of the top revenue categories, and strategy titles do show the highest monetization performance, even though the user base is much smaller than casual or action games. This trend, however, is not unique to emerging market, and we do see similar tendency in this category also from mature markets. Most importantly, Google Play and the Grow Consultant team is always looking to support you here, all of you here today. For this session, we can only go over the general trend of emerging market, but feel free to reach out to your Google partner for any customized needs when you are looking to expand into emerging markets. Now, let us go over some benchmark in terms of marketing metrics for gaming in emerging markets. So even though many emerging markets share the same characteristic, such as a large and growing user base, low CPI, when we zoom into particular game genre, the detailed metrics can be very different because player preferences and purchasing power will vary from region to region. Here you can see a breakdown of 6 emerging markets from different parts of the world for the action game category in terms of CPI, ARPU, and localization preference. As you can see, even though these 6 markets are all emerging markets, they are all very, very different. So for another genre, let us look at puzzle game, which is more casual. Similarly, if we run the same analysis for puzzle genre, we can see that every country is different. So my message here is to, before you enter any particular market, we should always do your research. As marketing and gaming expert, your Google team is always ready to provide you with relevant data and insight to help you win in emerging markets. So in the next few slides, I will show several user acquisition benchmark for 2 top game genre in emerging market, which are hyper-casual games and action games. On this slide, you can see several creative and user acquisition benchmark for hyper-casual games. In terms of the creative, you can see that text asset drives the most volume of install, followed by video assets. However, video tends to have higher IPM than text. If we deep dive into video asset, we can see that portrait video generates the most install, while video length with the most install is surprisingly long, about 20 to 30 seconds ads. Although shorter video have much higher video IPM than longer video. When we look at the CPI, we can see that low CPI present an attractive entry point to enter the emerging market. But at the same time, because of the low entry point, competition is becoming more fierce than ever with more titles coming out. Now let's take a deeper look into hyper-casual. For hyper-casual game, you can see 99% of ad spend year-to-date 2022 happened on Android. So this means that Android is by far the most important platform for this game genre in the region. In terms of bidding strategy, large publishers are finding success with their ROAS or return on ad spend bidding strategy rather than just driving purely install volume. As according to the chart on the right, you can see the ad spend for ROAS has surged significantly in the later half of 2022. Now let's take a look at another game genre, which is action game. So action game is more hardcore and more IAP driven on the gaming spectrum. However, we can see some similarity between action game and hyper-casual game in the region, in that text also drives the most install, with more share coming from video and HTML playable. In terms of video format, landscape video generate the most install, while the ideal length of video is either between 10 to 20 seconds or 20 to 30 seconds. In terms of competitiveness, the market is definitely becoming tougher with IPM dropping and CPI increasing 60 days. Let's take a deeper look into user acquisition for action games. So similarly to what we see in hyper-casual, 99% of ad spend year-to-date in the region happen on Android. However, in terms of bidding strategy, it's still very much driven by install, with half of the ad spend are driven by ACI, followed by ROAS bidding, which account for 34% of the ad spend, and AC for action account for 12% of the benchmark spend respectively. Here we see a similar trend that to hyper-casual, with top publishers are slowly finding success in terms of unlocking their return on ad spend strategy, with the graph on the right clearly show that the ad spend for ROAS having surged in the later half of 2022. So that was a very brief overview of gaming as well as UA and marketing strategy across emerging markets. I hope you find this session useful, And if you have any need for further customization, feel free to reach out to your Google partner anytime. Thank you for attending.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. I am Calvin and I am Payments and Monetization Consultant and part of the International Growth Team at Google. Today I'd like to share with you a little bit more about some monetization best practices. In particular, I will be talking about why hybrid monetization, something that we have been seeing grow in the market in the last couple of years. So when we think about monetization across gaming apps, for example, in the past, what it used to be was that depending on the genre of your games, for example, you were in hyper casual games or casual games, you would tend towards more of the in-app advertisements. Now, when you think about more mid-core to hardcore games, you're thinking about in-app purchases and subscriptions. But what we see today is actually a crossover from both sides towards the hybrid monetization model, right? And what we see in this chart today is that from 2016 to 2020, right, in the US, from 26% of games that were hybrid monetized to 58% of that, which has overtaken the non-hybrid monetization pool over the years, right? In China, we do see that similar trend, although it's not growing as fast as the US. But once again, depending on the markets, depending on the customer profiles and price sensitivities, there will still be a tendency towards hybrid monetization or single monetization models in the market. But regardless, as mentioned, the trend towards the hybrid monetization is here to stay, be it the crossovers from IAP to subscriptions and IAPAs or vice versa. Right, so essentially why hybrid monetization? And we pointed down to a couple of key benefits. So firstly, in this survey that was conducted, 1 out of 4 developers believe that hybrid monetization is the best way to monetize or maximize ROI, right? So if we think about the simplest pricing mechanism or concept, which is the price demand curve, it is a straightforward concept, but the challenge really lies in how do we extract maximum value at each point of this price demand curve, right? Diversification of your monetization streams is one way to do that. And secondly, 4 out of 5 developers believe that rewarded video ads work even better in a hybrid model than their own. Why? Because they are fundamentally able to provide players with a taste of some of these in-app purchases, motivate them to watch these ads, and really help them to overcome this initial barrier of becoming paid users, right? So in putting all of these together, what we have seen is that rewarded ads can actually boost IAP purchases by up to 6 times, right? So regardless of what measure you look at your business from, this is a significant part of monetization that you would want to consider. Right, and let's talk a little bit about some of the mechanisms that people are using to enable diversified monetization. Right, today we'll talk mainly about 2 parts. Right, first one is the battle pass, and second one is the in-game subscriptions. On the left-hand side, battle passes are essentially a concept where you have 2 paths. Right, one is the free path, one is the paid path. By virtue of you progressing in the game, you can collect rewards at each stage of these 2 different paths. With the free path, you get a taste in terms of some rewards, but when you unlock the paid version or the paid path, you get exponentially more rewards. So what this does is really twofold. One, it encourages players to actually progress through the game and play more, and potentially actually also buy other in-app purchases within the game, right? And secondly, with regard to the rewards, they are able to collect an exponential amount of rewards at any point of time within the season that they purchase this battle pass with, right? So these are some of the ways that battle passes have incorporated some elements of subscription, for example, driving the players to continue playing on the game for a longer period of time, and some of the in-app purchases and in terms of the rewards that they provide. So on the right-hand side, we have the VIP in-game subscriptions. So these can sort of vary from weekly memberships to 30-day memberships, etc. And depending on the different elements of subscription that you can play with, what you see in this example here is, for example, they enable you to play as long as you want. So like what we were talking about in the battle pass, this actually doubles the value by enabling customers to play the game more than what they would have without the subscription, therein enabling customers to stay more in the game and potentially purchase more in the game as well, right? So these are just two ways in terms of how developers are actually looking to diversify monetization, pulling in different elements from the different monetization models that were spoken about: in-app ads, in-app purchases, as well as subscriptions. Right. And just to put all of these together into a concept that we all understand, on the left-hand side, we talk about in-app ads. And really what this does is it enables us to monetize from a free playing user base. And with this diversified revenue, we can possibly reduce prices on the in-app purchases to meet some of the local demands, especially in emerging markets where customers are a little bit more price sensitive. This acts as a balancing mechanism that we actually can use across the other monetization models, right? And on the right hand side, what we have spoken about was the price demand curve. And thinking about that, once again, the challenge is how do you extract the optimal value across the demand curve? And this all boils down to price discrimination, right? When we talk about this, on the left-hand side, we look at high-value IAP. So the opportunity here is really how do you increase the subscriber LTV with additional items, for example, limited additional items that you can sell at a higher price. Then you look down from there, you're looking at the long-term subscriptions. Of course, you have different tiers, but once again, these are players who are very much invested in your game and are willing to actually pay more. The challenge here, though, is that these subscriptions have a conversion ceiling by virtue of the number of subscribers or payers that are actually willing to pay this amount and for the long term. Right, so we move slightly towards down the demand curve where we go into higher price bundles. Fundamentally, these higher price bundles are another level of price discrimination where we talk about self-selection, right? So by putting together elements across the game and demonstrating the additional value that it actually provides to different customers, right? Your different customer bases can select the bundles which suit them the best, and therein demonstrating this different level of price discrimination that we are talking about. And as we move down the demand curve into the lower priced in-app purchases, fundamentally, this helps us to increase our buyer base as well as the average revenue per user as well, right? When we think about the lower priced IAPs in emerging markets, especially, the price sensitivities of these customer bases are actually much more sensitive as compared to some of the developed markets. So this lower priced IAPs actually help us to overcome the initial barrier into converting them from non-paying users to paid users. Below that, you have the monthly and seasonal subscriptions as well, because of the fact that they are broken down into smaller subscription chunks. Of course, in the long term, when we put it all together, it may cost more than the annual cost, and typically is so. It gives more price sensitive users the opportunity to actually buy in, but at the same time also cancel or convert into a non-paying user at any point in time as well, right? So just putting all of these in perspective together, you would, as from a business point of view, think about where are you today in your journey? Where do you fundamentally want to end up in terms of your business? How do you want to diversify your business revenue streams? So this all gives us a sort of a high level guidance for us to develop the necessary steps on, right? So with that, that was a really quick sharing about hybrid monetization. Once again, I'm Calvin, part of the international growth team, and thank you, and hope to meet you guys at the Q&A. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. I'm really glad to be here today. My name is Marcos, and I am the Business Development Manager for Latin America at Google. So nice to meet you all. So today, we are going to talk about go-to-market opportunities. We all know that there are particular moments in the year that drive a relevant amount of revenue for your game. As a result, making any of these highest grossing days bigger has a positive impact. The question is, how? There are three main paths to explore with your POCs at Google. First, the promotional content amplification on the Play Store. Second, the Google Play's regional campaigns. And the third one, amplification campaigns with local payment partners. Today, we will cover all the three topics, but with a deeper focus on the amplification campaigns with local payment partners. Promotional content is a feature that allows you to submit your content to be considered for featuring on the Play Store. And several of the developers in our early access program have been using the promotional content to drive user engagement by showing events or major updates to targeted user groups and countries. And we are excited to share more improvements to this feature and to welcome even more developers into our beta. And please reach out to your partner manager if you have questions or if you want to know more about it. And as you know, at Google, we always try to create additional moments in the year that will help and boost the performance of your game on a global and regional level. And by creating regional campaigns, we are able to promote a selected list of games that bring value to users in the region. And to make sure we are creating a fantastic campaign, we are always looking for content that resonates with regional players, or deals that are also appealing to the users. Give us a heads up when your game has content connected to cultural aspects of a specific region, or in other words, when it has local flavor, or has even more attractive offers for users in that region. So please continue discussing with your regional POCs at Google so they can provide details on important local holidays and what types of live ops might be worth considering to capture these moments. Let's talk about amplification campaigns with local payment partners. Major payment partners are always looking for content to promote to their users, and they need to rely on content companies like you to create more attractive campaigns. And when they find something appealing, they might consider running it paid ads or promoting it with banners or cashback offers to create a more concentrated exposure for your game. For now, we are going to explain a little bit how this process works. And our job is to connect the dots by identifying opportunities for a game and presenting them to some of our payment partners. We usually identify and pick high potential live ops and launch for our market to amplify. And these are the type of moments we may be able to support. First, with new title launch or significant updates like large new content drops or new gameplay features. During limited time PvE or PvP events, or any other type of relevant in-game events. With promos and sales moments that include IEP discounts or bundles or any other in-game item sales. And during crossover or IP collaboration initiatives. It's also important to reinforce that by providing aggressive and appealing offers, and also by adding local flavor into the game, it could be a nice addition to be successful. And by providing the plan and the details in advance and the authorization to Google to share the assets with local payment partners, the game visibility might be increased by some of them. And here we have a standard process flow with an idea of what should be the main steps for an amplification campaign with local payment partners. So the step one, developer shares the details of the event and assets in advance and before the launch of the live ops event happens. Step 2, Google sends the game moments pipeline to payment partners and gets their initial interest to support. Step 3, Google, the developer, and the payment partner discuss the additional details, and the payment partner starts to work on the plan. Step 4, payment partner prepares and submits the creatives and the market plan for developers and Google's approval. Step 5, developer reviews the creatives and approves or shares the feedback. And the step 6, go live with the title of live op event on the start date. And Google shares the payment partner execution screenshots once they are ready. And each region may have a different timeline and process, so please check with your POCs at Google to understand what is the right process to be considered for a local amplification campaign with payment partners. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to share an exciting product update that may be relevant for you. So let's talk about Google Play Exchange. For the first time, Google Play is introducing to our developers a B2B platform, call it Google Play Exchange, or GPX, where members of the Play community can search, chat, and connect with other developers. We believe it's going to be helpful for your Go Global, IP licensing, and M&A journey. And a lot of developers are both developer and publisher, and they should be able to select all relevant roles while creating the company's profile. And this will allow peers to find them where applicable. And we have plans to enable keyword search in GPX as well. And hopefully when GPX gets out of beta, users will be able to search beyond the predefined roles. Each developer in GPX will have a developer profile with information about your company, your partnership interest, and stating the type of partners you are looking for. Find each other through search results. You can search in the top search bar by partner name and just enter a query and navigate through the search results. And then you can connect to any relevant developers, publishers, or IP owners on the platform by just using the chat function. And GPX also allows developer to share verified high-level details and performance metrics of a title. So then you can move to the next level of the partnership. The product is in closed beta at the moment, and we are inviting early adopters. At this phase, we are first focusing on our developers and publishers searching for new publishing partners and M&A opportunities. So if you have questions or if you want to know more about it, please visit the link available on your screen or just scan the QR code. This is all I have for you today. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Marcos, for introducing the Google Play Exchange and for all the speakers for sharing your knowledge and insights regarding emerging markets. Now we're going to go on to the Q&A session where we will bring back Kataro from Growth Consulting. We have Kataro.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kataro from the Growth Consulting. Good to be back in the Q&A. I'll be happy to move forward with answering some of your questions.
And Calvin as well from our International Growth team.
Hi, everyone. Good to be back.
So if you would like to leave questions, please use it from the Q&A chat box on the side. Submit your question on the Slido chat. So it's slido.com, #GoEmerging2022. And then there's the QR code for you to scan. So we would love to receive questions. This can be more interactive. So one of the first questions that was left was regarding whether we would be sharing these sessions, summaries of these sessions via email. Unfortunately, we're not sending emails, but we will have this as video on demand after the session is over and after we've prepared the link. I think that will be shared with you guys. So please make note of that. Then I think from Kataro's session, there was a question regarding if the action genre included RPG in your analysis. Kataro, could you comment on that?
Yeah, sure. So there was a question in regards to having, the action genre including RPG. In terms of the data side, we pulled the data from the Google Play Store category. So in that aspect, the action genre does not include RPG, as this has a separate category on its own. However, to just make a slight, note, is that some games may have, action as the core base gameplay with a bit of RPG element into it. And if that's the case, they may be included in the action genre list in general. But overall, action genre should not include like very, obvious RPG genre games.
Okay. And sort of along that same topic, the next question also relates to the session that you shared. It seems that lighter genres, so casual and action, are well received in emerging markets. But would you say it would be difficult to be successful with an RPG game?
Yeah, thanks for the questions. It's a really good question as well. And I think there's a lot of people who actually think that in general. So just to quickly answer that, like mentioned in the question, casual action is the more popular sort of genre within these emerging markets. But I can say RPG has definitely been, there are some RPG titles that have definitely seen success in these emerging markets. And like I mentioned sort of in the presentation as well in regards to sort of the other genres, although like RPG games will not probably be able to get as much user reach in terms of compared to like casual and action games. However, mostly they can RPG definitely can make it up for that with the monetization metrics because they tend to sort of focus more on the IAP side as well. So in terms of that, I can see definitely success in that aspect. But it is important to keep in mind that in terms of these performances as well, even on the monetization metrics, this might be very different to what you notice in the tier 1 markets. So just be careful in terms of expectations there. But definitely, yes, RPG games can be successful in emerging markets.
Okay. Thank you, Kotaro. I think there were some questions left with Kevin as well. So I think there was a question about hybrid pricing. So the question is, in terms of hybrid pricing, would the IAA and IAP split be different compared to mature markets? Or can we apply a hybrid strategy globally regardless of market maturity?
Right. So maybe I'll take that. And thanks for the questions. In terms of IAA and IAP splits, in general, yes, it will differ from market to market. But I would say that you can apply a hybrid strategy regardless. So here it isn't so much whether you can apply it or not, but rather the extent to which you apply it. So market maturity really influences where your monetization model might lean towards or be more invested towards, and therein the results that you would expect from your different revenue streams will differ within your hybrid strategy. So rule of thumb would be that IAAs or sort of low-cost IAPs will be more prevalent in some of these emerging markets because of the heightened price sensitivity, right? So that said, there are many factors which influence which form of hybrid pricing one would use and the extent to which one will use it, right? So you're thinking, for example, the type of app, maybe it's non-gaming, maybe it's gaming, and within gaming, maybe it's a casual versus a mid-core game, all in all, it determines which, say, a couple of factors, right? So one could be, for example, the time spent on your app, the ability to segment your customers, the additional value you are able to provide via IAPs, and so on and so forth. So therein, the results will differ from market to market as well, from some of these factors as well. Yep. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Calvin, for the answer. I think sort of along those lines, there was a question left about sort of diversifying the income stream. So I'm guessing it would be sort of the IAA and IAP split. So there's a small, I guess this developer is relatively small and they don't have much budget. So from that perspective, would there be any advice you'd have on how they might think about, diversifying or trying maybe an experiment of those?
Yeah, I would say at this present moment, I would say go back to the basics and think about what your core product is, what the capabilities are, and the value that you actually provide, right? Think about what your current core revenue stream and sort of identify if there is an opportunity to introduce other sensible forms of revenue as shared during the session earlier. So, I mean, you're thinking IAPs, you're thinking subscriptions and all of that, right? And if you're a gaming app, for example, and today you only use IAPs, you have an opportunity to explore IAAs. So that is somewhere where you can link up with your account teams who can get in touch with our open partnerships group to just help you along the way there. Or if you're a non-gaming app, for example, you could start taking a look at some of the adjacent industries like gaming, for example, in terms of how they actually use some of these other monetization streams beyond IAA, for example, to actually provide more value and also get more customer value out of it. Yep. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I think there was a question regarding sort of pricing. I think there was a comment left if we would be talking about localized pricing and localization. And we covered that in Vinay's session. So there's a question, and I can help answer this one, but it's regarding, the EAP for localized pricing experiments, and if there's a recommended genre or type of game to have the effective results. I think this is an area where we are going to explore with our partners. I mean, we have, initially tried this with a few, and it has worked sort of for the top genres that you see in the emerging market categories. But I don't think that means that, there's specific genres that apply while other genres don't. So we welcome, I think, all genres try different, pricing tiers for the emerging markets. Hopefully we can make, more success cases together. So the answer pretty much is no, there isn't, a specific genre that will have a higher chance of success versus another. Okay. I think there was a question left by Nobita that I see on the screen here. What is the best practice in maximizing the exposure events in promotional contexts? So I think we share these in the Play Help Center article as well. But in terms of when you do a store list or when you're participating through a live ops card or one of the amplification campaigns that was mentioned in Marcos's presentation, I think basically it's pretty much back to basics. Like make sure that your next your call to action, the video that you include, like all of this is very clear and really shows to the users what the value proposition and what the user should expect from the game. So what we see sometimes is that users sort of see the text or see the video play and they think of one thing, and then they realize when they play the game that maybe it isn't what they expected, and that leads to some loss. So just make sure that the message is consistent and that you really are showing sort of strengths and differentiation of your game, maybe versus others in the same category. Okay, so I think I'm going to take the next two questions sort of together and make all three of us can help collectively answer this. But basically, it's about sort of monetization and localization. And I think this is sort of thinking about prioritization. So what market The question is, what market do you think we should start monetization first? Particularly if the genre is action RPG games. The second question is, which market is the easiest to localize our games to? If we take the second question, I think it's not knowing what your game is. I think it's very difficult for us to say which market is the easiest to localize your games into. I mean, I think obviously you would need to prioritize your resources, and obviously there would be user research done and the market attractiveness. How big is the market? What would be the size of the total addressable market for you? And given sort of your internal, external resources, what matches up the most? And then in terms of sort of strategic direction for the company, what makes sense for you? I think those are some of the factors that you might consider in terms of localization for a specific market. Kataro or Calvin, do you want anything to add to this one?
In terms of localization, I was going to add a bit more into sort of the monetization area, but if Calvin has that.
Please go ahead. Please follow with the monetization part.
Okay, sure. So I think the question was for RPG, action RPG games, which market should they start first in terms of monetization? And this is just purely sort of my opinion as well, based on sort of looking at the trends and data wise. But I would say if you're going to use the action RPG genre and trying to break into like these emerging markets, in terms of monetization, I believe that Southeast Asia, especially like regions like Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, Malaysia, this area tends to be more, I guess, perceptive to the action RPG genre. Looking at sort of like the top grossing side, we see RPG genres getting into sort of like the top grossing side. So if it was for like promising monetization metrics that you're looking for, in my opinion, I would concentrate on the Southeast Asian market first, and then see how you can expand towards like different emerging markets like LATAM or India or MENA areas.
Okay, all right.
And
Alvin, monetization specialty.
Yeah, I know. I just wanted to add on what Kotaro actually said as well. Within LATAM, you would see that among the different markets in LATAM, they do differ by their preference in terms of the type of games that they like. So depending on the market size, it all links back. So within LATAM itself, Brazil and Mexico are probably your most popular markets in terms of action games. Casual games, for example, are much less popular there. So some of these things to think about as you sort of develop and understand which markets are best for your games as well. Yeah, just to add that.
Okay, all right. I think in the interest of time, that might actually be the last question that we would be able to take. So thank you, our panelists, again. And we hope that helped answer some of your burning questions about emerging markets. Okay, now, as we always want to improve and make these sessions more relevant for our audience, we would greatly appreciate your feedback. So it would be great if you could take a few minutes and provide that to us now by scanning the QR code or by directly going to this link. So bit.ly/emerging feedback form. Okay. There was a lot of content packed in under an hour and a half. So we started with Kotaro sharing the user landscape and differences between emerging market user behavior and markets. And these would definitely be new opportunities that you could tap into. Then we drove a little deeper with strategies to win in these markets, May in terms of localization, in-game operations, and then Vinay specifically on placement as you think of strategies for purchases. Louis introduced genre insight and user acquisition strategies for top genres, and Calvin spoke about hybrid monetization as another business to consider. Marco shared how Google Play support your expansion through the store and amplification campaigns, as well as introducing the Google Play Exchange in beta, which allows you to connect to other developers on the platform. Then some of us came back to address questions you had left throughout the session. We want to thank you again for your time today and for the partnership. We hope to continue supporting your growth with Google Google Play. Final plug for feedback. Thank you very much and have a good day, afternoon, or evening, wherever you may be.